Hello, I'm Dr. Angie McCartney.
And I'm Ruth McCartney.
Welcome to TeaFlix,
where each episode's intimate conversation features a fascinating guest across the spectrum of Beatles world, pop culture, Grammy winners, the music industry, chefs, producers, music stars, actors, and more. So bottoms up and join us as they spill the tea on TeaFlix. And it says, once again,
we are live. Hello, folks. Good morning.
Hello.
Good evening, wherever.
Our little Tuesday warriors.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing? Is February better than January?
Oh,
depends where you are, I suppose.
It's only 4 days in. Give it a chance.
Yeah. Well, at least we had the celebration of the Grammys and all the firefighters were honored, which was a lovely thing to do.
It was fabulous.
And the Beatles won a Grammy. Did you hear about that?
Stop. Well, make it stop.
Poor Ange didn't stand a chance this year. She made the ballot for Liverpool Limerick's audiobook, but she was up against President Jimmy Carter's audiobook, so there wasn't really a chance of much of a chance of taking the Grammy home.
Not really, no, but still.
But anyway,
yeah,
swing for the faces, Ange.
Absolutely, something like that.
Anyway, we are more than thrilled to have been able to hook up with today's very special guest. A gentleman that most of you Beatle fans, obviously all of you Beatle fans will know, and all of you Fest fans will know in person. The lovely Al Sussman is going to join us today. Al's been writing about music, pop culture, and particularly the Beatles since 1968. From a suburban New Jersey teen column to a collector's Q&A for Sound's fine music newspaper to 45 years and counting with Beatle Fan magazine. He's also the author of a book called Change in Times, 101 Days That Shaped a Generation, and has been a contributor to each volume of Bruce Spicer, who was last week's guest, Beatles album series. Al was also involved in various capacities with Beatlefest and the Fest for Beatle Fans for 5 decades before retiring, which we're all going to talk him out of today.
Oh, yes, don't be ridiculous.
In his other life, Al spent some 30 years in the music business, including 15 years as a radio analyst for ASCAP. So without further ado, the crowd goes wild for Mr. Al Sussman. Welcome, Al.
Hello, Al.
Hi, ladies. How are you?
We're good, thanks.
Well, that was your first mistake, ladies.
Ladies. How very dare you?
Girls.
Girls, even better. Girl. Even better. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been
Thank you.
It's been a journey trying to get you two together, hasn't it?
Yes.
Missed connections and wrong emails and whatever. But here we are.
Looks like we made it.
Exactly, in the words of Mr. Barry.
Yeah.
So, how did you get started in writing in general with your teen column? Obviously, you were in your teens. What publication was that for, and what was the genesis of your whole writing career?
This was actually right out of high school. I was on the committee for what was known as the Maywood Teen Center in Maywood, New Jersey, in Bergen County, and the newspaper it was for was a little town paper called Our Town, okay. and a couple of years before that, I had done some research on a previous column that had been in that paper back in the 50s when the Teen Center was first established, and so I brought up the idea. This is sometime in 1968 of possibly reviving the column, and started in late October of 68 and did it for about 2.5 years.
Oh. Good grief. And so you would write about all things that were important to teens, right, in the music industry?
Yeah, exactly. Both in the area. Used to write about, bands that were particularly popular in the area. Yeah. But I tried as much as possible to kind of sneak in stuff about the Beatles or about what was happening generally on the pop and rock scene, things like that.
Yeah, it was a terribly active time, wasn't it? The 60s and 70s.
It certainly was.
Good grief. You mean you could literally turn around and somebody fabulous and new was coming out from, whether it was California's, Strawberry Alarm Clock to the Hollies in England to, good grief. Did you, outside of the Beatles, did you have another favorite, a soft spot for another band or artist?
Probably if there's a band that was kind of like number two for me, probably the Beach Boys.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting. Absolutely
And
fabulous.
and actually the period of theirs that I probably like the most is the period that most people probably like the least, and that's the period from about 1968 to 74, 75, some in that area, when they
Right.
weren't selling very many
Yeah.
very many records,
Mm.
but the creativity of the whole group at that point, not
Oh,
just Brian Wilson,
Amazing.
Right.
was a full flower.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a funny side story here. The East West Studios it's on the 6000 block south side of Sunset Boulevard between Gower and Vine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they recorded the Pet Sounds album in Studio 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're lucky enough to get to film there and work there with McCartney Studios quite often. And it's been built onto now, but what used to be the back patio area where everybody would, step outside and smoke dope and whatever. There's a funny little, I went to Candace, the studio manager, and I said, I think somebody's smoking in the back of Studio 3. I can smell like French cigarettes, like Gauloise. And she's like, oh, no, that's Brian. I'm like, what? She said, oh, yeah, it's the ghost of Brian Wilson. He used to hang out literally right where you smell that smell. And he wouldn't go outside because he didn't want to get contact high, but he'd stand in the door and smoke his Gauloise cigarettes. Yeah. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's Brian. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
I love LA.
Yeah. Our friend Ashley from Birmingham is saying there's a strong connection between the Beatles and the Beach Boys.
Absolutely, there is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, very much so. As a matter of fact, when Paul was in, he came to America in early '67 eventually to visit Jane Asher, who was doing Shakespeare in, I think, maybe Portland.
Oh, good grief.
But along with that trip, he also made his way down first to San Francisco, where he met the members of Jefferson Airplane, I think possibly the Grateful Dead, and then down to L.A., where he got together with the Byrds, but also went to a Beach Boys recording session. And at the point when Brian was doing the Smile Project,
right,
and actually appears on one of the tracks from what would eventually be the Smiley Smile album.
I never knew that.
No.
Good grief.
Yeah.
I knew he'd been out to America to visit Jane. Shakespeare in Portland sounds like a Stephen Bishop album, doesn't it? Red Cab in New York.
I was actually knitting a suit for Jane Asher at that stage.
Were you really?
Yeah. She wanted, can you imagine knitting a suit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you?
I did. Oh, yes. I can see it in my mind's eye now. It was white with navy blue crocheted, around the collar, a bit like the early Beatles suits.
Oh, how fun.
And
Wow.
she sent me from a company called Stevens Utica in America, a set of towels as a thank you present.
Yeah.
And I used them until they were threadbare. They were gorgeous. Of course, this is when we were still on Merseyside.
Right.
Come from America.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I digress.
So then you got into writing about collectors stuff, right?
Right. This would be, I guess, about 74, I believe this was. I started writing for Sounds Fine, which was basically just kind of a, are you familiar with Goldmine?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
The collector's paper. This was kind of like a Goldmine type freebie that was sold not sold, but that was available in record stores.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and they were looking for somebody to do a column answering questions from people about various forms of collecting things
Yeah.
like that. And
What's the strangest beetle collection thing you ever heard of with a fan?
I'm sorry.
What is the strangest beetle fan
Collectible.
Can you think of
The strangest one, I really couldn't say. That's
Because they had lunch boxes and wigs and
oh yeah,
all of that bubble bath.
oh sure.
I think it was Charles Rosenay was telling us that Ringo was the most selling bubble bath. He sold the most bubble baths of the four of the four.
They must have had the dirtiest fan,
Isn't it?
I can believe it, because at the very beginning, in '64, he was actually the most popular of them.
That's right. Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
So
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was Charles that said that, and it was because people wanted to collect them,
And be able to reuse them.
and be able to
Yeah.
reuse
yeah.
them. But the one they kept in the bathroom that they used was Ringo.
Yes.
Ashley's saying John's molar, one of John's teeth, was the strangest collectible. I don't even know if I want to hear that story.
Yeah, really.
No, I mean, when you think about the licensing that Brian did for them, it was unheard of in those times, wasn't it? Merchandise for a band.
Pretty much. I mean, in the '50s, Colonel Tom Parker did a little bit of that with Elvis.
Yeah.
But not really, not to the extent that there was in '64 and '65.
Yeah.
With of course, unfortunately, there were also a lot of sort of outlaw
That's right. Yeah.
merchandise as well.
Well, it still is, isn't there, to this
Bootleg
day?
stuff.
Yeah.
Oh sure.
Yeah.
I think it's worse nowadays with
Big racket.
eBay and all of that stuff. You never know. I saw something on Facebook this morning. Some poor guy has paid for 4 Beatle autographs, and it looks like only Ringo's is real.
Oh dear.
Somebody's got a Ringo autograph and forged the other 3. So you have to be so careful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Oh, that's for sure. Especially, when we know now that a lot of those autographs were done either by,
Mal Evans did lots.
Mal Evans, exactly. Mal or Neil or Tony Barrow.
Other people who did a few.
yeah, I think I might know some other people who earned pocket money for doing them.
Signing things while watching television.
So funny, a friend of ours, Dean from Las Vegas, came in. It's a while ago now, and we went down to our local Indian restaurant. It was where you could still take food on planes, through TSA. And he said, "This is the best Indian ever. I'm taking some home to Las Vegas." So he ordered to go, and he said, "If I have any trouble at the airport, I'll tell them it's a celebrity to go meal. Will you sign it for me?" And so I just signed Ruth McCartney, my regular signature.
Sure.
But having done the other one so many times as a child,
yeah.
full of friends. He's dashing through LAX with a brown paper bag with my name on it, and somebody stops him and says, "Is that Paul McCartney's autograph?"
Yeah.
How much you want for it?
How much do you want for it?
Yeah.
He said, "Well, it's full of chicken curry, so I don't know if you really want it, Yeah, Ashley's saying Neil signed a lot of autographs as well, too.
Yeah.
Neil was said to have signed the best autographs. Well,
Oh, really?
practice makes perfect.
Oh, right.
Hey, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how you get to Carnegie Hall, isn't it?
Yeah.
Practice.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
So
I haven't got my reading glasses on. I've got some notes here. Hold on while I just change my specs. So what gave you the idea for your book, Changing Times?
101 days is the key phrase.
Right.
Yeah.
And why did you specifically? I mean, the Beatles have been around for 5 decades. So why did you choose the 22nd of November '63 to the 9th of February '64?
Well, that was and actually, it's even beyond there. It actually ends up on March 1st. And it was an idea that I had kind of ruminating for quite some time, and then I guess this was be about 2007. It just sort of came out of the blue. I thought, I think this would make a good book, and plus also, I guess probably the real trigger is that the period there's a period there in December of 63 that nobody remembers anything about.
Oh, must have been some good stuff.
Yeah, this was in the immediate few weeks after the assassination of President Kennedy.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are a lot of people that didn't know much about the period between that
I see.
and the breakthrough of the Beatles
On February.
in America. Yeah.
Right.
And so I ended up doing a lot of research down in the basement of a library in Hackensack, New Jersey, research that now I could do probably on this iPad.
Yes.
Right here.
No time. Oh, yeah.
And
But in those,
ChatGPT could do it for you while you go make a sandwich.
exactly. But at that point, I had to use microfiche
Oh
of
my
the-
God.
Oh, gosh, I
of the-
remember.
of the
Yeah.
New York Times for every day during the period that I was dealing with. And I realized in doing all the research that, not only were those, the two big events of that period,
The bookend,
which
yeah.
I kind of bookended the book.
Yeah.
The first couple of chapters in the book are on the Kennedy assassination and its aftermath, and the last chapter is on the breakthrough of the Beatles.
All right.
But in between, there was a lot of stuff that happened that either kind of pinpointed change or led the way to it. The Surgeon General's report on smoking, which basically
really?
put the brakes on 7 years of record-breaking cigarette consumption in this country. It didn't eliminate it, unfortunately, but at least it kind of put the brakes on it.
Yeah.
The Pope went to the Holy Land for the first time. In fact, he was the first time that a Pope had left Italy in a couple of centuries.
Good grief.
Wow.
Things like that.
Wow. The universe was certainly changing. And I think the Beatles were obviously, a catalyst to turning people's heads to pay attention to that. But, Bruce Spicer was on last week, and Bruce was very particular to say that the Beatles' success was not cause and effect because of Kennedy's assassination, because the Beatles were famous in Sweden and Japan and Australia and whatever, and their head of state had not been assassinated. However, I pushed back a little bit saying, yes, but America was the market to conquer, and America was just so damn depressed that when the Beatles came along, it was just a breath of fresh air. I'm not saying that their success was to do with it, but I think Ashley was just saying, America's in a state of mourning after Kennedy, and the Beatles helped bring everybody out of the sadness. And a few months after, it was probably a mourning period long enough where it was okay to enjoy yourself again.
Yeah. Plus, in those days, I was 14 at the time.
Right.
And I think in those days, unless you had a death in your family, I think kids were more resilient at that time.
Oh, what you mean? They weren't the snowflakes they are today?
Yeah, pretty much.
Now then,
because really by, I would say, the middle of December, I think kids had really kind of moved on. It was a psychic wound that basically we still have. But as far as our day-to-day lives, we had kind of moved on. And so that's the middle of December. And it wasn't until the beginning of January that I Want to Hold Your Hand really broke out. Right. So you're talking really about 6 weeks in between. So that's why I've always kind of, pushed back a little bit at that theory that the country was deep in mourning, and
maybe the parents were, but they weren't the fans. They weren't the demographic, right? The kids kids bounce back. You're right. I mean, they do. Yeah. They're like cats. They're made of rubber. You can't break them, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you wish you could.
Let's not even go there.
What is it? A friend of ours in Houston, he's got 4 kids, and he says they're only cute to save their own damn lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think that's a very interesting, the world turns, and yes, obviously it was a huge shock to the whole world when
Sure.
we lost Kennedy. But if you're a Beatle fan living in, Liverpool or Rome, Italy, or Stockholm, Sweden, the Kennedy assassination is not going to have affected you so deeply.
No.
And they don't have Thanksgiving, which was right after, the week after the assassination.
Yes.
Thanksgiving, right?
That's
That
right.
must have been the worst Thanksgiving ever.
Yeah.
I mean, good
Well, it's weird because there was, like, you're familiar with, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York.
Right. Did they still have it?
It was held that
Is it
Thursday.
really?
Wow.
The only evidence of, they wanted to, in fact, actually they announced at 9:00 in the morning on the Tuesday, the day after JFK was buried, that the parade would go on basically for the kids.
Yes.
And really the only evidence of, the aftermath was the fact that there was, mourning bunting on some of the street signs and on, like the drums for the bands we had, black crepe on them, things like that.
Yeah.
Wow, I'll have to go back and look at it. It's probably on YouTube somewhere. That'd be a very interesting. What a dichotomy for the producers and Macy's of the show, because Macy's wouldn't want to be seen. Now we're all brand savvy, right? In this day.
Sure.
But can you imagine the Madison Avenue Mad Men conversations that went on between the assassination, the funeral, and the Thanksgiving Thursday about, well, how do we present ourselves and not look jolly happy, come to Macy's, spend your money in a respectful way? That must have been quite the conversation.
We
Not
were
only
still
that.
in England then. Yeah.
What's that?
We were still in England then, so of course it didn't
Sure.
have the same impact on us.
We were going to say,
Yeah.
not only that, but
Not only that, but but NBC had taken obviously a huge financial bath that previous weekend because they had eliminated all of their programming and no commercials.
right.
So I think they also were probably not really all that sold on possibly canceling the parade and losing more revenue. I mean, that's kind of, it's kind of a, how do you say it's,
I know what you mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah. It's just,
yeah.
I mean, if you're Macy's and NBC, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So you might as well go ahead anyway, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
the old
That's
sword of
true.
Damocles.
Yeah.
It's like nowadays, if you discuss politics, which we don't, if you fall on either side of the fence, you're going to lose half of your audience. So you just respect everybody's opinion and position and don't ask and move on, right?
Yeah.
I suppose it's the same lesson, we learned today. It's just amazing. So the period between like November the 11th, when John met with with Ed Sullivan and his people.
Yes.
And then, do you have any inkling as to why? Because they would not have known on November 11th what was going to happen to JFK.
Right.
Why didn't Ed Sullivan book them like the next week or for the Christmas show? What was the gap? Or was there any reasoning, or was it just scheduling between then and February 9th?
I think it was scheduling because they already had they were already in the midst of a British tour.
Right.
And I think they had already also made the commitments for their that engagement in Paris in January, which was 20 shows.
Right.
So probably February
was probably the earliest available.
Was probably the earliest, yeah.
They must have been itching once Brian got back to England and told them, you're going to America, you're going to New York, you're going to be on the biggest variety show in America. They must have just had ants in their pants, right? They're trying to focus on the British tour in Paris, but all eyes on America, because it still is the shining city on the hill. It's it's the place. I'm going to make myself cry. It's the place. It's the place that people dream of coming You know,
Yeah.
We did.
it still is. We did.
We did.
We-
Yeah.
we-
Sure.
all of the things you have to do, the TB test, the AIDS test, the written English test, the lawyer, the this, the that, the other. But I wouldn't change it for a thing. I'm
Yeah.
proud to be an American citizen.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And in fact, in Michael Braun's book, Love Me Do, he because he had toured with the Beatles during that British tour,
That's
and they were being asked about the about whether how what they anticipated of on coming to America, and they were not at all sure that they were going to make it, because Cliff Richard and a lot of the other British teen idols had completely flopped here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't think about that they came first and tried to break the door down. It just didn't quite work out, did it?
Exactly.
It's strange because Cliff is he's like royalty in England, right? And it's like and Johnny Holiday in France.
Yeah.
He's like the king of France. But they never quite cracked the American market quite like the Beatles did.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think Cliff had a couple of hits in the 70s.
Yes.
But
with Olivia Newton-John, he had a big hit with Olivia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Xanadu, not Xanadu. No, she did that with that was with RSO. But yeah, I think Cliff thought it. But he can't go anywhere in England without being recognized and asked for an autograph and whatever. It's funny, isn't it? How different audiences. It's like comedy. We did a long 3-year project for John Cleese from Monty Python, and we would sit and talk long into the night about why some nations love Benny Hill and slapstick, and some just don't get it.
Sure.
And it's like Japanese comedy shows, even if you don't understand the language, they're much more about physicality and
people falling off balconies,
falling over. Schadenfreude, and we're sitting there going, "Give me Cerebral, please. Give me Monty Python." It is. I suppose we're all as we are. We're made.
We're all as we're made.
So back to your book, Change in Time's 101 Days That Shaped a Generation. How long did it take you to write the book from the inception of the idea until actually having a manuscript?
7 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. There was the research and then the writing process, plus also a little complication is that I had some fairly serious vision problems during that time. And so it took until it was published in November of 2013.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a
It was a labor of love then.
Yes,
and so
indeed.
what is your what did you want to ask here, Ange?
Yeah. So what is your process for research now?
Well,
it's so much easier now, because
that's right.
now I can I've got a couple of iPads, so basically now I just will look up a particular a lot of times I can just Google a subject just to kind of spruce up my memory, which is not what it used to be.
Happens to us all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have menopause, Al. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Menopause.
That's what's doing it. You walk around with your glasses on your head looking for your glasses. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Done that. No, but I mean, so when you research something for this book, for example, the first Pope to leave Italy in 200 years, I just find that fascinating that you would even think to put that kernel of information in a book essentially
that's about
pop culture, right?
Yeah. Well, it helps to have actually experienced all of that, because that was the other thing. That was the other reason why I wanted to do the book about that particular period, was because so much of it I remembered. Right. Except for all that stuff in December that I mean, I remember as I was saying about people not remembering anything from, say, the first month after the Kennedy assassination, and about all I remember is before I did the research was Frank Sinatra Jr. was kidnapped.
That's yes.
In almost mid-December, and then also I'm a sports fan, and this is well before the birth of the Super Bowl. And I was living in New Jersey, very close to New York, and so was rooting for the New York Giants, and they were in the NFL championship game. So it was like those two things were about all I remembered from December. But but I did remember the Pope in January going to the Holy Land. Yeah. So things like that. Just basically, as I said, went through the New York Times and also Time Magazine.
Yeah, I was just going to say these sound like Time Magazine covers to me.
Yes. Yeah. Matter of fact, Bruce has been great about this. The chapters, the news chapters that I've been doing for his Beatles album series books. He's been going onto eBay and all and getting copies of Time Magazine and Newsweek to kind of illustrate the chapters that I've been doing.
Wow.
And
Diana's asking, do you find more new information on subjects? I'm guessing, I'm paraphrasing for Diana, but I'm guessing she means stuff that you've researched previously, you could only find so much on microfiche. Is that knowledge sort of seeping and growing as more things get added to the lexicon or the piece of information?
Well, now there's so many more avenues. Because newspapers that were just on microfiche. Now, for instance, the New York Times, which was my other primary source. Now they have this archive called Time Machine, which where again you can just put in a specific date, and the newspaper for that day will come up.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Do you have to have some special kind of access subscription to that?
I have the digital subscription,
right?
So I'm sort of eligible to. But I think actually, I'm not sure of this, but I think most people can, even if they don't subscribe, can go on. Now, like Time Magazine, I think for their archive, you do have to have a subscription.
Yeah.
Because these things cost money. It always amazes me. We're in the internet business. We build websites and brands and run fan clubs and social media and all. And the amount of people who say, "Oh, I want to pick your brains." Oh, well, will you, post 10 times a week for me on Instagram? And I'm like, well, okay, I'll send you a rate sheet. Oh, but Instagram's free.
You're going to sit and do everything for nothing.
I'm going to create the Photoshop, create the artwork, write the theme tune, sing the theme tune, post it, do all of the hashtagging and answer everybody's question. Oh, yeah, that's free. Jeez, So, no, I'm not surprised that there's some digital access. But isn't that great, though? There's something called the Wayback Machine as well that our viewers might be familiar with. I'm sure you are. But if you go to the Wayback Machine project, it's publicly funded through educational grants. But you can go back and see any website, a snapshot of any website from its inception. And ours, if you go Google like McCartney Multimedia on the Wayback Machine, you'll see all the way back from like 1994. You'll see snapshot every time the website changed. They capture a snapshot of it. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how you do go back to see those, and it looks so primitive.
Okay. Elizabeth's asking a question that maybe, impolite, but she's asking, was David Peel right about the Pope? I don't even understand what the question means. So.
He did an album for Apple Records. Called
I know who he is. Yeah. Okay.
Called The Pope Smokes Dope.
Oh, I see. That was the.
Oh, you never know.
Yeah. If he could get his hands on it, probably would have. And
could be.
our musician friend Rich Pell is saying he hung out with David Peel in New York City plenty of times. We both spoke in rhyme. Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, how lovely.
Well,
Oh, God.
I remember the first Beatle Fest was held at the Commodore Hotel.
Yeah.
Right near Grand Central Station.
Yeah.
And David was there I remember at various points during the weekend, but on Sunday morning, because there was, the Commodore had like a balcony over the lobby. And on Sunday morning, he was in the middle of the lobby with his guitar, just doing an impromptu concert.
Oh,
He was unique.
Yeah. Elizabeth's just saying he lived in a building close to her boy. He used to make her boyfriend peanut butter sandwiches.
Yeah.
Righty then, boy, we dug one up with David Peel, didn't we? Good grief. We should go research David Peel in the New York Times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah,
So, how did you get involved with Beatle Fan magazine?
Well, that's actually another Beatle Fest story, because in 1979, in February of '79, Mark Lapidus and I have known each other since 1970, because we worked together at a Sam Goody record store in New Jersey. And in fact, I was one of the first people that Mark talked to about Beatle Fest.
Wow!
When he brought up the idea in the winter of '74, but in '79, he had suggested that I should be on one of the panels. And so the first panel I was on with Wally Petrazik and Harry Castleman. This is just after they had put out their discography all together now. And Nicholas Schaffner, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He did what American fans consider one of the very best Beatles books, called The Beatles Forever.
Yeah.
And so I was somewhat intimidated, but also went up to the flea market as always, and there was a table there with this couple from Decatur, Georgia, Bill and Leslie King, and they had the first 2 issues of this new magazine that they had put out called Beatle Fan, and the appearance of it looked more professional than the normal
fanzines.
The normal fanzines, which looked like they had just been mimeographed 20 minutes earlier.
Right.
So I picked up the 2 issues and subscribed immediately. A couple of issues later, in his publisher's notes, Bill put the word out that he'd like to have a New York correspondent. And so I thought, hey, why not? Because the collector's Q&A column had come to an end, and so I was looking for another sideline gig. So I volunteered, and to show you how long ago 1979 was, a New York correspondent, my job basically was to go through the newspapers, and anything relating to the Beatles, I would basically do, just tear them out of the newspaper, put them in a manila envelope, and send them down to Georgia.
Oh, good God. Imagine that nowadays.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That was 79, and so you started doing that, but you wound up as the executive editor, didn't you?
Right. A couple of years later, I mean, Bill's very, very liberal with these titles, because I think I became a senior editor about a year in. Great. And then he gave me the title of executive editor.
As Well deserved. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why
Oh,
not?
yeah.
What are you doing with Bruce at the moment? You're contributing to one of his next
Yeah, well, what I've done is the Beatles album series books. What
Yeah.
I've done is I've done either a chapter or two in
Mhm.
each of those books,
Oh.
and by about the third book, we had kind of settled on. I did would do a chapter for each one on the news events of that particular of the period around the particular Beatles albums
I
that were
see.
in that particular book. So basically using the change in times, kind of the playbook.
Model.
And, and
The zeitgeist, in other words, sort of
yeah,
wrapping it in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
and
Interesting.
then a couple of books ago, Bruce asked me to also do a chapter on the pop music of the non-Beatles pop music of that particular period.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's
So-
nice to set the stage for, especially for younger fans who are coming to the Beatles for the first time,
Mhm.
about what all else was going on,
Mhm.
to really kind of, the set dressing in the background, if you will.
Yes.
Like,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
If it's you don't often see a play with just, a chair and a microphone. There's other stuff that makes this story happen, right?
Yeah.
Diana's just saying she has 3 scrapbooks filled with Beatles articles from the 65 to the early 70s. What a great thing to have, Diana.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. She's also asking, will you be at the New York City Fest for Beatle fans next month?
No, I've actually retired.
Oh,
From the
come
fest. I
on.
figured
Stop
after
How
50
Come
after
on.
50 years, I figured it was time. There's a chance of Chicago.
Come on,
'Cause
Chicago.
it's a
Let's
little
hear it.
closer, but no, the New York Fest. I've done my last one.
Oh, bummer. Well, let's get you to Chicago. There's some fabulous food there, and
Oh,
people
yeah.
will love you, and
Yeah.
the whole family. What somebody logged on this morning and said, "Hello, fam." It really is. The Beatles, group. I hate to call them fans because it's such a
Well, the word fans
It's a
means
silly
fanatic.
word.
It's
a
a
family.
It's a community, really.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. You see all these Facebook groups, and it's just
Mhm.
it's all about love and peace and uplifting and all of those
Happy
good things.
memories. Yeah.
So, how did you meet Bruce Spicer? We've talked about Bruce and his books and your part on his team. How did you meet Bruce?
Another Beatle Fest story. This was in, I think it was 1998. He had just put out his book on the history of the Beatles on VJ Records, and I happened to again come across him in the flea market at the fest, and you would think that the Beatles and VJ Records is only the one. There's only the one album. You would think that it would be a fairly slim volume.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the VJ book, but it's absolutely eye-popping.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of hit it off, and especially since I was doing one of the things that I've done over the years with the fest was doing scheduling, pardon me, of panel discussions and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I ended up dealing with Bruce quite a bit during those years.
Gotcha.
But also at the fest we would just hang out and with other fans and just spend a lot of time schmoozing and all.
Well, that's the wonderful part about the fests is that, and now even during COVID, Tilly did a great job of bringing it on Zoom. They were incredible with the technology and all of that stuff, And I think as bad as truly bad as COVID was, I had a conversation with Mark afterwards, and he said, we had people log on to the fest and buy a Zoom virtual ticket from, Brussels and Johannesburg and Tokyo and whatever. So the audience that was able to be built through, again, technology.
Yes.
But it again goes to prove the global presence of the Beatles and,
no question.
And the generational follow on, which is why I think it's great that, Bruce has put a team together to keep writing these incredible books. You can get them at goldenage60s.com, by the way. And also at is beatle.net, and your website is beatlefan.com, right? If people want to find out about you. So if you want to join Al and so on Facebook, learn more, and beatlefan.com. So what's it like being part of a collaborative team? Is there a lot of back and forth between being on a team like Bruce's, or do you just have your set thing that you're writing about and you submit to him and he's the conductor?
No, well, for instance, I just got an email from him a little while ago with basically the first 3 chapters of the next book, which will actually be the last one in the Beatles album series, which will cover the period of Beatles for Sale and Help, and also from the American market, Beatles 65 and Beatles 6.
Yep.
And so he sends actually to Tom Frangione, who of course you know.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And me, he sends us the chapters for us to, peruse, to either fact check or proofread.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and plus we talk by phone, quite a bit. In fact, we're planning on going down to New Orleans in, pardon me, in early May, right around the time of the New Orleans Jazz Fest.
Jazz Fest, right?
Yeah.
Make sure it doesn't snow on you.
Yes.
When Bruce was on a couple of weeks ago, he had snow on his front lawn. Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
The world's gone absolutely mad. So people can find you at beatlefan.com. Right. What a great domain name.
Yeah, isn't it just?
I might have to arm wrestle you for that one day.
Yeah.
The Digital Diva. And as our special, is there anything else? We always ask, is there anything else that you're passionate about in Beatle world that we forgot to ask that you'd love to share with our folks?
There was I was interested in the reaction on Sunday to the Beatles getting a Grammy for Now and Then in the best rock performance category. And because I think there were also people who I think were expecting that they would definitely get Record of the Year, where they were nominated in that category, except that they were nominated in that category with just about every major pop star of the moment. Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Chappell Roan, Sabrina Carpenter, all of them. There was absolutely no chance that they were going to win that category.
Yeah,
but
they did.
Good. Yeah.
And Sean was there to pick it up. Yeah. I was just sorry that they didn't tell you had to be on Grammys.com to see the actual
the pre-show. Yes.
Pre-show is like our client Edgar Winter won a couple of years ago, and it wasn't part of the telecast. But what people don't realize is if you're a Grammy visitor, if you have a ticket, you have to be downtown at 1 p.m.
Really?
Oh yeah, they start the actual awards at 1 o'clock, so you have to get there at 11:30 to go through security, find your seat, and then blah blah blah. So it is a long day and high heels if you're there for the whole kit and caboodle. And you don't. So the telecast starts at 5 and ends at, it's supposed to be 8, but this year it was 9. And then all the limos with the stars leave, and then they let the general public out. So you don't get home till midnight. It's a 13-hour day if you go to the Grammys Yeah, it's brutal. It really is. And then add insult to injury, they charge you about $100 to get out the parking lot.
Oh,
Because by the hour. It's just crazy. Well, this has been absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy writing. And as our viewers will know, that it's limerick time. They're all asking, is it limerick time?
Look out now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, are you ready, Mr. Sussman, for your
yes,
limerick?
I am.
Oh, jolly good.
And a 1, 2, 3. There once was a... Do you want to start again?
Yeah, sure.
A 1, 2, 3. There once was a beetle buff owl. Ran Beetle Fan Mag for a while. And so, as a writer, he makes our lives brighter. To Fab 4 fans, you're a real pal. Ta-da!
Yeah. Thank you very much.
There you go. Well, thanks so
Great
much again
pleasure, Bruce.
for
Thank you.
making the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's
I called him Bruce then.
clapping. Well, you know, that's
No problem.
It's because she's having her Tuesday breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fabulous.
Sorry, Al.
And we will look forward to your contributions to the next Bruce tome. And we will see you guys all of a sudden. Thanks for tuning in. Share and share away. It'll be on mccartney.com later this afternoon on the front page and on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much, everyone. And as Uncle Ringo would say, peace and love.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to TeaFlix, and check out Dr. Angie's books, Organic Teas and CBD at mrsmccartneysteas.com. Toodle pip.